Wholeness, welcome. Josh DeBull again, Integrating Presence podcast. This is a little treat, extra treat of me speaking with Galactic Historian Andrew Bartzis on his adventures into reality call-in show on June 2nd, 2022. If you need an introduction, go to andrewbartzis.com. I think galactichistorian.com redirects there too. And I kind of come out of my shell here with some of the higher level information that I don't get a chance to talk about much publicly. And as a little teaser here, you'll hear an announcement in the clip itself. And of course, I'll have these links in the show notes. Enjoy.
All right. Integrating presence. Josh, signal to unmute.
Integrating presence, Josh, are you there?
Yes. How's it going, Andrew? It's been a
Great.
while. I chatted to you. I think it was the last time I was on an Amtrak train to Chicago. And the other fellow you have on that did the yoga, David, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I talked to you a few other times, so it's always a pleasure and a benefit when I get
What's going on in your world, and what do you want to talk about today?
Oh man, my world. I'm sure there's some interesting things to share, but what do I want to talk about? I look up through my past questions here. I'll just toss those out here. What's a good non-substance way to enhance, expand, and explore consciousness?
Non-substance?
Yes. So not related.
Pranayama breathing, Wim Hof method breathing, and learning to do it as a dedicated daily practice until it's an on-demand skill. The first breath can create the altered consciousness state.
So could we jump into a little bit of just exploring consciousness here?
Sure.
As far as like the verbiage can go. So the basic just root question is, what is consciousness? And then maybe to suss it out here a little bit, how is it distinctive from awareness and maybe just mindfulness?
Hey, hold on, you've got too much in the data right there.
Yeah, so let's suss those out.
Where does consciousness exist? Are you familiar with heart rate variability?
Well, when I can feel my own heart, I know it varies.
No, it's an actual scientific term.
Okay.
The time in between heartbeats is where consciousness exists. It is always aligned to the heartbeat, and the spaces in between heartbeats. When the heartbeat goes faster or slower, the waveform of consciousness changes. When we consciously lower our heart rate through breathing, meditation, spiritual practices, we have a waveform that is easier to reach through and bring information back that has language we can process and understand immediately. It may have vision, taste, smell, or other concepts that are attached to it. When the waveform is very fast, it's harder to reach through that and get snippets of information. When one is in the zone, like in sports, and hitting three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer, the heart's going very fast, but the impulse of body control is so refined that three-point is fluid in flow, and the consciousness can reach through the change in the heartbeat and the heartbeat variability process with ease. And then there's somebody else who is in, let's say, in a Tai Chi format, controlling the body at the slowest moves to lower the heart rate down so consciousness is more present in all the cellular structures and mitochondrial power plants. That's the fundamentals of consciousness. What we choose to do from that point is directed information, not information that we're searching for out of curiosity. Curiosity is the downfall of consciousness. Active process learning is the advancement of consciousness. Now, what is greater consciousness? That is a bigger part of what is a living, breathing soul. A soul has no time. A human being has time that is a soul in a physical body. There are beings who do not have physical bodies and do not have time, but still are a consciousness not limited to the perceptions and deceptions of time. When we actively learn to detoxify from Roman numeral time through various spiritual practices, we have access to the soul who is in the body and the information from the astral environment that can change the course of one's active learning state to begin to observe the other realms laid over all thoughts and perception. That's the multiverse that is around everyone at any point in time or no time. Robert, can you unmute him, or can you unmute?
Signal to unmute, Josh.
Okay,
go.
my bad on that. I'm
Yeah.
keeping my hands away from the keyboard this
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
So, speaking of that body consciousness, I've studied a little bit of Theravada Buddhism, but the advanced psychological teachings in that is called the Abhidhamma. And I hear different practitioners that are at the level where they can analyze matter down to the four elements, right? Until it gets into particles, and that's one layer of it. And then the particles that are responsible for consciousness reside in the heart, like Andrew was talking about. And I'm just wondering, as a follow-up here, how to release the seals on our this awareness of our body, because it seems like, these very subtle layers have kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, seals that are keeping a lot of us from having more direct knowing and awareness with the body.
First thing first, there are no seals. There are just perception, deception filters, and internal taboos that don't allow us to explore. Second, they're not really particles. Those people that are practicing that level are understanding that consciousness is photonic light, and photonic light can spread anywhere into the multiverse via thoughts or thought constructs that can project it very far, very fast. And when we reach a superluminal observable state. Now, those particular yogis and those practitioners are using microscopic vision to help define their reality. When in the beginning, you should be working on macroscopic vision. All of the different layers of the multiverse trying to function with you, and you learning them one at a time and how they affect you. Also, the perception is not technically in the heart, it's in the thymus. The thymus is the high heart. And advanced practitioners who have done the inner work and the physical body work, when they begin to focus on the vagus nerve and using the vagus nerve to actually enter the thymus, you will have a different heart space, cerebral awareness of consciousness.
Awesome. And then, yes, and then of course we hear the could you break down like the association of light to consciousness? And then of course we talk about going beyond the light layer, that there's, people will say they might think they're enlightened with the light, but there's beyond even that.
Okay. So I'm going to start with memory.
Okay.
There's chemical memory that's stored in our short-term and long-term memory. And then there's memories in light that have no longer chemical association to them. When we become advanced conscious practitioners, we enter light-based memory and stop chemical memory, which slows us down. This creates a superluminal awareness, super and luminal, meaning light moving at light speed without the restriction of chemical thought encoding a chemical memory. Here's an example. Your favorite memory in your life that you could never forget is a light-based memory. The fart you did when you were 9 years old may make you laugh, but it's still not a light memory. Okay?
Yeah.
So when we want to enter those states of exploring consciousness, we have to relax the body to the highest states of our capabilities at that moment of our education, and then actively enter light, where we perceive ourselves as photons, that we are just an auric body, even though the physical body is there. We must always include the body in the experience. The light-based memory does not bypass the body. It just gives us access to instant superluminal thinking and awareness. What to do with superluminal thinking and awareness is part of the greater spiritual strategy one has before they have even sat down to go into that process. Once again, curiosity learning will be the slow destruction and entropy to light-based awareness versus focused strategy that before you even sat down, you're clearing your mind. I'm going to work on entering my physical body and saturating my body with light as a light memory, meaning there is no time associated to it, to activate all the mitochondrial power plants to produce light. So much light, we have excess light that we can send to 1 second into the future. Okay. And then once we've adequately practiced how to send light into our 1 second into the future, we learn to send light 1 second into our past. And then we cycle sending photons 1 second into the future and 1 second into the past. And once we've mastered sending light through time, we are technically time travelers. And all light memories are time traveling processes, or realm jumping, or multiversal experiences.
So then when we tie that in with multiple timelines, it can get pretty vast pretty quick. And then how does the breath go into this? And then how do we discern different forms of light, like false light, cold light, true light, clear light?
So slow down. You're gonna muddle the conversation. So your breath is light.
Okay. How or why?
So you must see the lungs and the hemoglobin exchange of oxygen into blood as a light-based experience also. So once again, strategy of consciousness, we've begun to practice sending light forwards and backwards. We are sending breath forwards and backwards and beginning to empower the blood to have this light-based experience. And then we work on the marrow. Generally, your blood lasts about 56 days in you. When you start working with the marrow, you will have a much deeper process of sending light forwards and backwards through time, because the very marrow and the blood have been programmed with this process. How do you see light as breath? That will be your own visualization process. What I like to do is tell people to learn to turn their third eye inwards and down, and looking down your neck into your lungs, and project light from your third eye while it's in your brain, and watch your lungs expand and contract in conjunction with the breath exercises. The lungs filling up with light as a non-chemical memory, and relaxing, opening and relaxing, accessing the diaphragm so that the lungs are filled with light, all the alveoli are filled with light, which is the hemoglobin exchange system.
Awesome. If you're okay with this, well, since it's being recorded, I have a podcast in the work just asking people these two simple questions, and it can be on any level for any duration. Mm-hmm. What is light, and how do you know?
Okay. How do you know when to laugh at a joke?
Very good. Better question, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So how does one recognize its light? The whole thing with spiritual practices is you are in a creative state. And whenever we're asking, am I making this up, you are giving entropy to the creative state. The creative state is an equal part of the co-creation of the vision that becomes real to you.
I see. Well, what is light itself?
Light is photons. But photons can't exist without consciousness. They're all photons in reality have consciousness attached to it in some way, shape, or form.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I might have asked in the past with the chat. I'm also very interested in the four elements. If there's anything you can say about the four elements, either individually as a whole, or what's relevant about them in general, or now, or however you want to approach it.
In the same process of learning breath work and converting from chemical memory to light-based memory, the elements can absolutely be integrated into the marrow work, which gives you a much deeper reserve of energy. A lot of people don't realize one little astral projection moment can cost you 90 days of energy, quite literally. And this is why so many people don't succeed at astral work, because it costs so much energy to build yourself up in the focus and to project it 1 inch out of yourself or 1 second into the future. And then you've just taken away 90 days of reserve energy. So you have to learn through that deep practice and dedication to the practice to build up those reserves so you can maintain the outward projection of that process.
So I guess the big question here is, yes, what are we doing this for? Like, what are the goals? And I remember you said the systematic learning with a plan. So that's totally on board with that. Maybe giving some people some ideas of what to do with that, right?
Okay, here's a couple.
Sure.
Wind. As you're breathing in, you feel the wind of the environment coming into you and adding denser amounts of oxygen to your light-based system in your lungs. Okay, water. Your lungs are full of water too. Water is fully programmable by consciousness. Okay, we've all learned Dr. Miramoto's
Yes.
programming of consciousness in water. Fire, that's your solar plexus. Adding a fire concept, that means using the element of fire. I talk about fire ceremonies all the time, and so many people are like, me, I can't start a fire. I don't know what I'm doing. It's going to burn everything down. That's your own doubt. When you actually have something that's far bigger than a candle, you will feel the element of fire. Okay? Earth, ley lines, high-powered energy areas, doing those practices in those areas in a sacred format that is given all the protective factors so you can trust the environment and the environment can trust you back. Learning to trust the elements is vitally important.
And, for me, my interest is in truth and reality. I love the co-creative possibilities that we have and the abilities that we have too. It's amazing. But I guess my personal journey, what I'm really interested in now is penetrating deeply into the nature of reality. So yes, what you said with the elements and working with our body in that way. That's right. So one of the methods I use is deconstructive, right? But when you start deconstructing things, it can be really destabilizing. So of course, recommend people have a really solid foundation before they start doing that.
Right. And it's easy to get lost in the story of deconstruction or construction. The story is not that important.
Yes.
And people want to hear the stories about themselves, the thises and the that's. That's is generally irrelevant unless the person actually knows what to do with it.
That's right. And, that's just a way that it's kind of our human way we relate to things is through stories. Yes. It's the huge difference between reality and our interpretation of reality, right?
Exactly.
Because most people live in a story about reality. They don't actually live in reality itself, big time.
Exactly. So learning to let go of the attachment to the story is just as vital when you're in those deep, basic practices of in that creative state. Because the creative state isn't a story, it's an experience.
That's right. And also realizing when we go to express that or relate that, translate that, try to tell somebody about it, it's not the same thing as the actual experience either.
No, that's why we have to learn to write our thoughts down after the experience as a committed process of chronicling our journey.
Yes. And when I first heard you mention that saying that if you're not journaling it, you're faking it.
Yep.
And it really resonated with me for some reason. And I've kept pretty much a journal. No, it's been, when I started it, I'm decent at daily practices because when I commit to something, I'm serious about it. So I don't take commitment lightly. So every day, I think it's been since maybe 16, I've kept a journal. And most of it is just kind of really simple things that happen in my day, just so I can remember. I can have a snapshot, go back to any day. And if I hear, something say, well, these two galaxies collided or in this black hole was formed on this day, then I can go back and see what was going on in my day then and say, oh, yeah, I'll start seeing different connections, synchronicity, maybe looking into the karmic implications surrounding that on different scales and whatnot. So, thanks for that.
So that is the practice of hindsight. Without hindsight, we cannot have foresight. The whole purpose of chronicling our journey is to master hindsight. By looking at what you've written in the past and reinterpreting it through the inspiration it was in the moment. Then we get to work on foresight, that which I have not written yet. And by breath work, learning to send your breath 1 second into your personal future, you can get access to your precognitive workforce that is working on documents before you've been inspired on them.
That's so cool. And my precognitive stuff usually comes in when it's like, the more kind of a dangerous situation that we're possibly in, the better the cognition. For example, like somebody getting ready to go into our lane in traffic, it seems like I can detect that a little bit easier than something that doesn't have any kind of an emotional charge, right? So, but the perception, somebody mentioned perception too, and sometimes I've heard that perception can even be more subtle than consciousness. So, like the reality mechanics of perception, we all know what kind of perception is, but how does it work? And then how can we really discern, what's higher levels of perception, how to let go of perception, what will happen when that happens.
So first thing first, perception and perspective can be synonymous and be separate. We can have a perception of a subject, but our perspective skews it based off of our traumas, dramas, learned and healed and unhealed aspects of ourselves. Example, the last caller knows she's disassociated and is unable to overcome it for an extended period of time, but has sought a shaman. So there's aspects of her that are associated and disassociated with the process, which will absolutely influence her perspective. And then we have perception deception filters, things that are in our consciousness and subconsciousness that skew the perception from the very beginning and change a light memory into a skewed chemical memory. Even though we're thinking it's a real light-based memory experience, our traumas internally take the higher frequency out of it and lower its journey in the memories.
I guess I'm wanting to approach it more on a fundamental basis. So just think of when we were learning words and what things were when we were children, right? We see something and an adult tells us, oh, that's a tree, right? So now, if I'm getting this right, every time we that kind of thing is locked into our perceptual system, so where we kind of think we know what it is now because we have a name to the the color and the shape and maybe the way the light hits it, right? And so now we call that a tree. And a lot of times people think, well, I know that's a tree. I know everything about it because that's a tree. What else could it be, right? Until our perception starts expanding, we start going back and reaccessing it, looking at it on deeper levels. Yeah. So how does that process work? And
I got a memory. I got a thing for you.
Sure.
So our world has 7 colors, right?
Yes, I've heard these teachings from you as well.
Okay. What would an 8th color look like?
Right. That's beautiful. That's great.
So it gets back to, how do you know a tree is a tree? Because somebody told you a tree was a tree. Mm-hmm. If you saw an 8th color, how would you describe it? Putting yourself in that light-based experience where we on the edge of our unknowingness and have conquered our fear about unknowingness, we can begin to experience the unknowingness as knowingness, where the precognitive and postcognitive workforce are working on that light-based memory experience so that we don't skew it to being a 7th color instead of an 8th color.
That's right, because we always want to jump to reference points, and they can be helpful. But what happens if we didn't have reference points, and that was okay,
right?
And you're completely into the unknown. Like sometimes I don't mention this much, but I'll just say when I'm kind of viewing certain things, sometimes at certain places, and they don't really have reference points, it's like the visual, it's really hard for me to remember it. So if I really wanted to keep track, I would have to sit there and try to the best of my ability, just start describing it, verbally, because I don't have much skills. I mean, I have some skills in drawing, but it's usually a 2D representation of something that's more approaching at least 4D. But the thing is, though, it can morph and change so quick. By the time you're trying to find the words to describe just a few moments, it's already changed so much that now the visual information is just so overloaded that to go back to the memory to try to describe that, it's
right,
so much.
Because you couldn't slow the information down in the moment. One of the things that people wonder how it is I do what I do, I slow the information down. Okay. What I tell people is I'm working with a 1 million letter celestial alphabet and translating it to English. There are times I have to come up with a literal metaphor because there is no English to describe it. And in that moment, by slowing the alphabet down, the flow of data in and out, I am able to process it as a superluminal memory, even though I'm consciously actively with you. I'm not in a channeling mode. It's always been me all the time. And the acceptance of you, it is all the time. And you are the cipher that unlocks the code of the 1 million letter alphabet. And by slowing the information down, we give our infinite processing energy the ability to be infinite processing energy again. So example, right now you're stuck in the 2D determination in the drawing. What you should do is go pick up a triangle and a compass and start drawing geometric shapes. Go and get a workbook on drawing sacred geometry so that you can begin to master the hand-eye coordination, because it'll make it in better instant representation for you when you're dealing with something that's coded light. It's not coming to you as closed caption English.
Yes, exactly. And this was the one decent thing I was at in school is geometry, because I could, see it and understand it. The other stuff was just kind of abstract, whatever. But yeah, that's right. And when I spent time, I could draw too. And then also this comes in with the FOMO, right? Even on these levels, that the fear of missing out. Oh, well, if I slow it down too much, well, then I might miss something. No,
and that's impulse control and curiosity learning hijacking the moment.
Oh yeah, yep. Good point. Thanks.
Okay, it's hijacking the moment. Your own desire. No.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lord, grant me patience and grant it to me right now. Right.
Exactly. What does it take to deal with these callers? Eternal patience. Is my eternal patience challenged with some callers? Yes. It's why I've developed a form of diet tough love or full-on tough love, because there are certain people that's what they need in the moment. But when we're dealing with ourselves and we want to become truly authentic consciousness explorers, you got to have a plan, you got to have a strategy, and you've got to stick with it. You got to have that diary that you look back on that is the culmination of all your experiences, so that you can begin the breath work and work on foresight.
Right on. Hey, now just kind of switching into a different mode real quick, or maybe not mode, but something else that's curious. The sacred geometry harvesting techniques in cities. Can we go into a little bit of that, of how it's actually done? I mean, I will go into new cities when I visit them and just kind of read the energy, see the structure and the flows, the axis mundi of the city. What kind of groups are in the on Earth that might be surrounded with them. What they might be harvesting, how and why, depending on different times. It goes on and on, right? So I'll just throw it to you to. Yeah,
well, I know you're trying to shotgun as most thought.
I know, right?
There, but some of that is overthinking an environment. Sacred geometry, buildings, artwork, monuments, those have spells in them that were created in an age where secret societies used spells in a scientific way. The Masonic groups no longer exist in the same power they did 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Those groups have lost their core practitioners. There are so few real magicians that the sacred geometry systems have no repairmen. They can't fix. If a city were to break in a sacred geometry format, there would be not enough wizards in the whole world to fix it. The knowledge has been lost. So you have to understand everything is from a bygone era in which consciousness was imprinted through spell work. Example, the Washington, D.C. Robert, can you pull up a picture of Washington, D.C. sacred geometry? The entire city, roads and everything are built ground up sacred geometry, and it's an example of a spell.
But what about like these? Sorry to interject here. What about like different off-world groups who come in and use technology like this cube technology and powering it with this and that, and using symbols and sigils and rings and all this stuff, and just coming in through human actors as well, and having them do certain things, and the AI too.
All of them have been contracted by the subsurface government to come and do that, because they know there's not enough surface wizards anymore to deal with that. They're outsourcing practitioners from other places and spaces to maintain the sacred geometry system until such a time that the digital magic fully takes over and they no longer need the sacred geometry architecture.
And so as far as practical solutions to this of building cities, I looked into some of this Maharishi Vastu housing. So remember the Maharishi, the guy of TM, he looked into the Vastu of the Vedas, and they have it's built on the doors facing east, the proportions to nature, the natural building materials. It has to be it can't be too sloped. The water features have to be a certain way. Around, and then
all that is ancient knowledge. Robert, that's great. That's a great example of the sacred geometry of a city. Now that is designed to trap energy. Every bit is to trap energy. That design right there. Now, the cube technology and some of this other stuff you're talking about, what that purpose is this: the sacred geometry system doesn't have the wizards to break down, so they're outsourcing others to come and put patches and fixes on it until such a time as digital magic fully overtakes. That's why transhumanism and chipping people is trying to be pushed.
So how will that transition? How would that transition, theoretical transition, work?
Just listen to the Davos morons.
Yeah, but I mean, how is that going to play out in physical reality, though? I mean, that's all virtual, right?
Well,
people still have to live somewhere.
No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't.
Now, what do you mean by that?
So if consciousness believes it needs to live somewhere, it believes it needs to live somewhere. What about uploading a conscious completely to the cloud?
Oh, that's what they want to do, and that's what they're trying to do. It's not
that's the ultimate side of transhumanism.
Right, and then putting it back into clones, and they think they can escape all their karma by just going into their own virtual worlds. Or
did you ever see the TV series that was on Netflix? What was it? Altered Carbon.
Oh yeah, Black Mirror too. No, I'm familiar with the shows. I haven't watched them though.
Okay, Altered Carbon there's a technology called a stack that goes in the back of your neck, and you download your consciousness in it, and technically you never die, and they can upload you into another body. So when people are criminals, they lose their body and get put on consciousness ice for a few hundred years, and their body is used by others.
Yeah, like the stasis chambers, right? Where you put because they're trying to fix problems to this, but it's not the way they're doing it. It's never going to work, right?
No, it's worked on thousands of other worlds.
Oh, but they're more technologically based, though, right? They're not just
no, they're not. Here, they're having a particularly hard time of implementing it because we're waking up so fast.
Okay, so I guess we talk about like how does this? So what they're saying actually works, but they still have merged machine with themselves, not just the uploading of consciousness, right? They're actually
what is a machine? Mm. Any significantly advanced technology can be misinterpreted as magic, right? So most of the off-world technology has no moving parts in their machine. So how is it really a machine?
Yeah, that stuff is so it's. Yeah, I mean, what do they call it? Technology.
They're mind constructs that have been solidified into a bar of metal, and it's imprinted just like water. There are certain metals, when combined with alloys, like water, we can imprint an entire architectural construct in it that is permanent, like a machine.
Isn't that wild? But then if they are mind constructs, you can just go into that and address that on that level, right? And you can use a mind construct to undo a mind construct.
If you understand the architecture and its understanding of the fundamental laws of the universe, there are certain architectures that are meant to defy the fundamental laws of the universe.
Yes, and then but it depends on what the rules and the laws and the principles are, I guess, around whatever reality system you're in, what you're allowed to do, and the consequences are, right?
You're getting it.
Yes,
which is why certain ancient technology is so foreign to these super advanced aliens that are out there, and like, what the fuck? How did they know that? How did they beat it? And then they become false gods throughout history to see if they can get access to who created that original technology.
And then some of these things are abandoned too, right? Like
I've
heard some of these cubes were Palladian cubes, but then they've been hijacked and reprogrammed, right? And so like with some of these advanced machinery, I was like, where do they get the the ideas and the blueprints? I mean, and then all the.
So we got to go back to the founding light beings of this section of the galaxy. Every galaxy has a group of founder beings when the original galactic central sun just has a handful of planets around it. And then when it gets 20 or 30 planets around it, or it creates its second galaxy, third galaxy, fifth galaxy, 5,000th galaxy. Every galaxy has a group of founder beings who then begin to imprint the fundamentals of what they've learned from other galaxies of creation, or are a new founder type being that's going to bring a new type of consciousness that may or may not use all the laws of the galaxy or universe.
And then these ancient ones who have done this and created all this and then gone and mastered it and then left here, what about returning to these?
Mm-hmm. They moved on in consciousness and are no longer founder beings. Some become explorers, some become creators. And then there are ones that look back on their shit like you look back on your notebooks and go, what the fuck are they doing to this? Or
Yeah.
begun to realize the infrastructure they left behind, which were a bunch of biological constructs. They didn't realize consciousness went into these biological constructs, and that life is flurried in all of these creations that they've littered all over the galaxy. We are technically iPhones and a Siri to a founder being, but consciousness has come into these biological skin suits because they're on celestial experiences.
Now, what about
many of the founder beings are in the process to becoming celestial consciousnesses.
Now, what about these? This kind of like a new grand cycle, and these greater cycles, and some people say this new cycle will come in and clear things out that need clearing out, and that whatever kind of thing that hasn't stuff that hasn't progressed will be pulled out in genetic form, and we'll just kind of be left with what we have in the physical body, if I'm getting that right. Well, just your perspective on these grander cycles that come and go.
First thing first, the biggest thing the spiritual community has been promoting as a fallacy is that it's a collective experience. It's an individual experience, and has always been an individual experience.
Absolutely, yep.
When you understand that it's an individual experience, and part of that individual experience is detoxifying from time in general, so you can have access to your no-time higher soul and all of the capacities that it can do to transverse the multiverse and still be here waiting for the others to go on their individual journey. So there's a collection of champions to the individual multiverse process, and then begins to create a groundswell. Yes, there is a cycle, and those that do not advance during the cycle will be left behind. No one will do this for us. It's why the aliens haven't come down and saved us. It's why things won't be done for you. You must do them for yourself. That is actually what this age, coming out of the dark age into the silver age and then into the gold age. So we're going from the dark age to a silver age. And that journey from 1 second, one click of the talk from dark, direct bottom, to 1 second past the direct bottom is the leaving of the dark age and entering the first stage of the silver age. And that first stage of the silver age means you got to do it for yourself. It is not a collective experience.
Absolutely. I mean, fundamental, yes. And the no time thing, the kind of maybe ironic thing is you have to do that in order to master time too. But the other thing that comes to mind with the dark thing, the dark rishis and whatnot, and also I don't know, like how if anybody has run-ins with not necessarily personal run-ins. I just maybe a general strategy for anyone for their agendas, if it's even kind of allowed to talk about. That's one big thing. The other thing I would think was, what are some of the bigger factions having influence? From what I hear and understand, that it's like a trading thing. So they'll be different depending on the time of year, or time of month. There'll be certain factions that come in and get what they need, right? They're harvesting and then get out, and they have all their different programs running here too. And some of that's in transition right now too.
Really? So the most influential group we have over us are the Hollow Earth groups. There's two aspects to the subterranean and hollows: those that still have physical bodies, and those that live in between the spaces of atoms and don't require a physical body to be consciousness. Those two groups are what control the surface world, which is a farm for consciousness.
This is the enhanced humans, right?
No, it's not even it. Okay. It's always been a farm. Yes. It's always been a farm. The astral world is what's going to come into the farm. Okay? It's what has been in the farm and what's coming into the farm. You can transfer from astral to hollow as long as you've had significant lives on the farm. The point of powerful souls living on the surface farm, it attracts more beings from other celestial sources to come and learn the lessons here. The specific lessons here for this farm are source disconnection and source reconnection, and the infinite amount of ways you could be source connected and source disconnected at the same time, or go through the transition of source connection to disconnection, lifetime to lifetime. It's why the great forgetting is so powerful here compared to many other worlds where the contractual amnesia is not as strong. Because if we remembered 0.1% of our past lives, our government would never be the way it is, and we'd never make the same mistake with girlfriends over and over again.
How do we address these prohibiting technologies that are keeping us from remembering?
This is something we have to learn through the spiritual practice, to go in and verbally break the contracts, vows, and agreements with the great forgettings. It is your birthright and legacy to be a multiversal translator, communicator, and transitioner, and the freedom to do it. And part of the entering of the first second to the Silver Age is those initial consciousness explorers that can say, I did it. Now that I've done it, I realize many other will not be able to do it. How can I help people to understand the fundamentals to be able to do it on their own, so I am not their guru? That's why early on I was nicknamed the anti-guru guru. You have to be your own guru. And you also will have to hold yourself responsible to the commitment and courage to stay committed to the path of the basics.
Absolutely, that foundation. And yeah, it's like the first of the many for the highest good of the many, right? Because if there's an example of what can be possibly done, then other people have the possibility to do it too.
Right.
Yeah, but and not confusing that with this outdated guru mentality, right? I mean, that's
Exactly.
It served its time when it was there, but now, I mean, I think there's only a few small groups that really applies to, that really helps them. But yeah. Well, yeah, I love the energy of this, how we're getting kind of amped up and bringing a lot of energy to this.
Oh, this was a fun conversation. I don't get to, let the hair down and flow it like this at shows.
I figured that I was getting that too, for sure. So, yeah, I guess I can let somebody else get in here too, because there's plenty of hands up. So I appreciate your time and help on this. And yeah, we shed a lot of light on light and so many other things. So I appreciate that, and everybody.
Well, whenever you do your podcast, I'd love to come on to it.
What? You're kidding me? Wow.
Sure.
I would love to. So yeah, I'll just reach out to your people, and yeah, we'll set aside some time. Cool.
Yeah, so you can Robert can reach out to you in text here in the chat, in the Zoom chat room, and just get your information, and then I'll contact you.
Cool. Pleasure. It would be a pleasure, and great service too. So.
All right, brother. Take it easy. It was really fun talking to you.
Likewise. Bye now.